Before America ever met the grumpy but lovable landlord Fred Mertz, William Frawley had already lived an entire lifetime in entertainment, one far tougher, lonelier, and less glamorous than television audiences would ever imagine. Before we continue, take 1 second to like, subscribe, and tap the bell icon so you don't miss more real stories like this. William Frawley was born in Burlington, Iowa in 1887, a river town where people worked practical jobs and expected practical lives. His father was a police officer, strict and disciplined, the kind of man who believed stability mattered more than dreams. Acting was not a career in that world, it was a distraction. But Frawley grew up surrounded by music halls and traveling performers drifting through the Midwest, and something about their energy hooked him early. Not fame, not applause, the rhythm of performance itself. As a teenager, he took clerical work for the Union Pacific Railroad, exactly the life his father would have wanted: safe, predictable, respectable. And almost immediately, he hated it. The desk felt like a cage, the routines felt endless. Within a short time, he walked away from the job and followed a vaudeville troupe instead, a decision that quietly determined the rest of his life. Vaudeville was not kind to beginners. Performers traveled constantly, slept in boarding houses, and worked in theaters that ranged from elegant opera halls to noisy saloons where audiences barely listened. You learned fast or you disappeared. Frawley learned fast. He discovered timing, not just comedic timing, but emotional rhythm, when to pause, when to speak softer, when to let silence do the work. That skill would later make him seem effortless on television, but in reality, it was carved out of thousands of exhausting stage nights. For years, he toured the country in double acts, musical routines, and comedy sketches, sometimes successful, sometimes broke. The industry demanded toughness, and he developed a professional reputation early: dependable, punctual, and never unprepared. Directors liked him because he did not complain. Fellow actors respected him because he carried scenes without stealing them. Yet the traveling life also shaped another side of him. Vaudeville performers lived between towns and friendships rarely lasted. You performed, packed, and moved on. Over time, solitude became normal to him. During these years, he married Edna Louise Broit, another performer. The marriage was less romantic than practical, two working entertainers sharing a road life. They spent more time in trains and theaters than in a real home. Gradually, the partnership wore down. The separation was quiet, almost administrative, finalized without public drama, but it left him permanently alone, something that would follow him for the rest of his life. By the 1920s, the entertainment world was changing. Vaudeville was fading as motion pictures grew stronger. Many performers vanished during that transition, unable to adapt. Frawley adapted. He moved into Broadway productions, bringing with him the discipline of live performance. Theater critics rarely praised him loudly, but they consistently trusted him. He became the actor directors hired when a role needed authenticity rather than flash. He understood character men, bartenders, neighbors, clerks, sidekicks, the ordinary people audiences believed instantly. Hollywood noticed. In the early 1930s, he relocated to California and signed studio contracts. Unlike younger hopefuls chasing stardom, Frawley arrived already seasoned. He knew camera marks, lighting patience, and script adjustments. Studios valued reliability, and he worked constantly. Film after film placed him in supporting roles: conductors, policemen, hotel managers, political aides. Rarely the lead, almost always memorable. He appeared in over 100 productions, often shooting one movie while rehearsing another. The pay was steady but never superstar level, and that suited him. Fame was uncertain, employment was security. However, Hollywood also introduced temptations the stage never offered so easily. Long waiting hours, late-night schedules, and studio social culture blurred professional boundaries. Rumors began attaching themselves to his name. Not scandals, but habits. The industry whispered about drinking, not enough to end his career, but enough to become part of his reputation. Even so, directors continued hiring him because on camera he remained flawless. He never missed cues, never delayed production. He separated personal habits from professional performance with strict discipline. That paradox defined him, a man both controlled and unraveling at the same time. Throughout the 1930s and 1940s, he built a dependable career as a character actor. Audiences saw him everywhere without always knowing his name. In one film, he played a political ward boss, in another, a railroad employee, in another, a trusted friend giving advice in a barroom corner. Each role added familiarity. Viewers felt they recognized him the way they recognize a neighbor they never formally meet. One of his more visible appearances came in the Christmas classic Miracle on 34th Street, where again he fit perfectly into the background fabric of the story. Believable, grounded, real. That was always his strength. He never performed at the audience. He performed inside the world of the film. By his late 50s, most actors slowed down. Hollywood preferred youth, and television had not yet proven itself stable. Many of his contemporaries retired or faded quietly. Frawley did not retire, he simply kept working. Yet privately, life had narrowed. No remarriage, few close relationships. The constant movement of his early career had never taught him how to build a permanent home. He lived mostly in hotels and small apartments, social in public spaces, but solitary in private rooms. Friends described him as friendly but distant, warm during conversation, unreachable afterward. He belonged wherever the next job was, nowhere else. Then, unexpectedly, television arrived as a serious industry. Studios initially dismissed it as temporary entertainment, but audiences embraced it quickly. Producers began searching for experienced actors who could perform live with precision. Frawley, now in his 60s, fit that need perfectly. He did not know it yet, but the medium about to define American households would also redefine his identity. After decades of steady anonymity, the man who spent 30 years mastering small roles was about to become unforgettable. And with that fame would come the collision between the disciplined professional he had built and the personal loneliness he had never solved. The world would soon meet Fred Mertz.
Television did something Hollywood never quite had. It turned familiarity into family. When audiences invited a show into their homes every week, the actors stopped being distant performers and started feeling like relatives. That was exactly what happened when William Frawley was cast as Fred Mertz on I Love Lucy. He wasn't the obvious choice. Producers worried about his age, and especially about his reputation for drinking. Insurance companies hesitated to approve him, which in early television could end a casting decision instantly. But Lucille Ball personally pushed for him. She believed his timing matched the rhythm of the show perfectly, sharp, dry, and grounded against the chaos around him. Frawley promised professionalism on set, and once production began, he kept that promise. The cameras revealed what decades of stage work had built. His pauses were precise, his reactions were subtle. He didn't chase laughs, he allowed them to arrive. Fred Mertz felt real because Frawley played him like a man who existed before the episode started and would continue living after it ended. Viewers trusted him. Almost overnight, the lifelong supporting actor became a national figure in his 60s, an age when most performers had already been forgotten by the industry. Children recognized him on the street. Adults quoted his lines. For the first time, his name mattered as much as his face. Yet fame did not rewrite his personal life. When filming ended each day, he returned to a quiet apartment. Coworkers described him as sociable during work hours, but rarely joining gatherings afterward. He preferred routine. Arrive early, rehearse carefully, perform flawlessly, and leave. The audience saw warmth between Fred and Ethel Mertz, but off-camera relationships were more complicated. He respected Vivian Vance professionally, and she respected his skill, but their personalities clashed. She was ambitious and socially active. He was reserved and set in old habits. Their tension never damaged the scenes. In fact, it sometimes sharpened them. but it revealed how separate his professional world remained from his private one. As the show grew into one of the most successful sitcoms ever produced, Frawley remained dependable. He rarely missed filming and maintained the discipline he had promised. The rumors never vanished, yet the work never suffered. That balance defined him, a man capable of strict control inside the studio, while his life outside it stayed narrow and repetitive. When I Love Lucy ended, he faced the same uncertainty many television actors feared, being permanently identified with one role. But he found a second life in another series, My Three Sons, playing Bub O'Casey. The character again fit him perfectly, older, steady, and believable. Viewers accepted him immediately because they already trusted him. However, age could not be managed as easily as reputation. His health began weakening. Years of strain and long habits slowly caught up to him, particularly heart problems. Filming schedules grew harder. He remained committed to showing up, but energy faded. Eventually, production continued without him, and for the first time in decades, he was absent not by choice, but by limitation. Retirement was never something he had practiced. Without scripts and studio calls, time stretched quietly. Friends visited occasionally, yet much of his life returned to the solitude he had known since the vaudeville days: rooms, routines, and memories of sets where laughter once surrounded him. In 1966, after leaving a movie theater in Hollywood, he collapsed on the sidewalk. Passers-by recognized him immediately, not as William Frawley the man, but as the familiar face they had welcomed into their homes for years. He was taken to the hospital, where he died shortly afterward from a heart attack at 79. His passing felt strangely personal to audiences. They had not followed his career across decades of stage and film. They had known him weekly in their living rooms. To them, it was like losing a neighbor. Looking back, the idea of a double life surrounding him was never about hidden scandal. It was quieter than that. On screen, he represented stability, humor, and domestic warmth, a man always surrounded by friends and family. Off-screen, he lived carefully, privately, often alone, carrying habits and routines formed during a lifetime of constant movement. His real achievement was consistency. Through changing entertainment eras, vaudeville, Broadway, film, and television, he never stopped working, never stopped delivering reliability to every production that trusted him. Fame arrived late, but professionalism had always been there. William Frawley did not transform into Fred Mertz. Fred Mertz was simply the first time the public truly noticed the craftsman who had been there all along. The laughter audiences remember was genuine, the loneliness behind it was real, and together they formed the full story of a performer whose greatest role was convincing millions they knew him, even though almost no one actually did.